I started crafting when I was 12 years old. As kind of a rambunctious child, I needed something to focus all of my energy towards. So I found card making. I absolutely fell in love with creating different projects each day and putting all of my energy towards creating. Then I found the internet and started posting my videos online for all of you to see.
Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to make a card for my starting YouTube channel.
And this is what's led me on this insane journey of finding the wonderful community of crafters and all of you guys to really keep creating with. But eventually, when I was 16, I found Ranger and started designing products with them. I wanted to leave my own mark on the crafting industry, so releasing a line of ink pads and then later on pastes and a bunch of different crafting mediums, it was a ton of fun. But if we're being honest with ourselves, a lot of us probably have some things from when we were 16 years old we want to go back and redo or erase completely. And while I wasn't out egging houses or building up a criminal record, I was sitting inside, crafting and designing products. But there's still a few things that I wish I could go back and redo. So this isn't an erase completely type of situation and forgetting all about what we've done, because I think we created some amazing products. It's more about just making them better and enhancing them over time. Which leads me into the fact that I'm proud to say we hit the nail on the head with the ink formula. That is staying exactly the same. Ranger has an amazing in-house chemist right in New Jersey, which we're able to go in and change our ink formula. And I remember tweaking this formula back and forth until we got it absolutely perfect for what I wanted. So I'm not changing anything about my original Simon Hurley Create ink formula. That is staying exactly the same. If I could go back with my 16-year-old self and design these ink pads from the ground up with the resources and development that we have now, I would make the ink pad surface just a little bit different, so that the ink comes out a little bit juicier and you get even crisper stamped impressions. So today, I'm beyond excited to introduce you to Stellar Ink, the same exact formula you know and love from Simon Hurley Ink, but with a brand new foam ink pad that helps elevate the formula even more, giving crisper and bold stamping, smooth blending, and better watercolor than you've ever seen. And we've even got a brand new blending brush that we've worked 6 years in the making to create, and I'm excited to share all of it with you today. Let's get into it. So here is a look at the first 12 colors of Stellar Ink. There's 4 brand new colors, and we've reintroduced some of the colors from the Simon Hurley Create line. As we go about releasing the Stellar Ink line, we wanted to make sure that we incorporate some of my favorite colors from the collection, and we will be retiring some of the colors that we didn't use as much from the Simon Hurley Ink collection to make room for brand new colors in the Stellar Ink collection. These colors are absolutely gorgeous, and I can't wait to walk you through them. So if you're brand new to Simon Hurley inks, these are all going to be brand new for you. But if you've loved and used the Simon Hurley Create dye inks in the past, you're going to recognize some of the amazing colors that we've brought back into the Stellar Ink collection. First, we have the gorgeous Prom Queen, which is this rich, intense, hot pink color. This is an older color that we're bringing into the Stellar Ink line because I use it in so many of my projects. Bee Sting is also a color that we're bringing from the Simon Hurley line into the Stellar Ink line. It's not super in-your-face, bright and vibrant, but it's like the perfect in-between shade of red. I found myself reaching for it often, so I needed it in this line. Guppy is this gorgeous, vibrant, light orangish yellow color. It's kind of in between a yellow and an orange, and I absolutely love it. This is the perfect color to go along with the reds and mix them in with yellows, and it'll kind of bridge the gap between them. It's just so bright and cheerful. Next, we have Shooting Star, another color that we had to bring over. The perfect, vibrant yellow tone is absolutely stunning. It's like the truest yellow you could possibly get, and it brings so much joy and cheer to your projects. Now, Later Gator is also coming from the Simon Hurley ink line into the Stellar Ink line. It's like the perfect mid-tone green color. It's not too bright and it's not too dark. This is like the Goldilocks green that I always found myself using. Then we have 4, which is a brand new color in the Stellar Ink line. I absolutely am obsessed with this. It's more of like an army green color. It's got a lot darker of a tone to it, but this is going to be great for the leaves on all of your floral bouquets. I think this color is absolutely perfect. You can see the difference here though. It's a lot darker of a tone. Later Gator is a lot brighter of a green, so they complement each other really nicely. High Tide is another brand new color in the Stellar Ink line. I'm so excited about this one. It took a lot of back and forth testing to get this color absolutely perfect, but it is like the perfect pool color. It's really nice and bright, and it's going to brighten up all of your projects, but it's the perfect mix of just enough green and just enough blue to get this gorgeous in-between high tide color. Clear Skies is coming back from the Simon Hurley line into the Stellar Ink line. This is a nice true sky blue color. I don't know, it shows up really bright on my camera, so I'll maybe show it on my iPhone too, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's like my perfect blue color that I find myself reaching for a ton. A nice and bright blue. Midnight Snack is not a new color either. It's coming over from the Simon Hurley line because I absolutely love it. It is the perfect navy color. Again, a really nice and true navy, but it's got a little bit of brightness to it when you blend it out like this. I absolutely love Midnight Snack, and I'm so glad that we have it in the Stellar line. And then a brand new color called 100% Juice. This is the perfect grape juice purple color, super regal, and it's got a nice warm tone to it. In the past, we've had Crown Me from the Simon Hurley line, which is more of a bluish purple. So for everyone who's been begging for the perfect purple color, this one is for you guys. It is absolutely perfect, and that's 100% Juice. Weeping Willow is coming over from my Simon Hurley line, and this is the perfect dark brown chocolate color. It's like the perfect amount of warmth in this chocolate brown color, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous whenever you need a brown. A nice and rich dark tone. And then last but definitely not least, a first for my ink line, we have a black. This is called Black Widow, and I worked hard with the chemist to get this as dark black as it could be. It's absolutely stunning, a really nice intense black color, and then of course you can blend it out to get this nice gray tone. It's got a little bit of a warm tone to the black, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I love so much how it stamps out and gives that bold, intense effect. So that's Black Widow. And then to give you guys a better look at the color palette altogether, I grabbed one of my stamps from the Paint Swatches stamp set, which this would make a really fun background as well. But here's what all of the colors look like next to each other. This is the first 12 colors of my Simon Hurley Stellar Ink, and I'm absolutely obsessed with them. And check out just how great they stamp. I mean, of course, this is a little bit of a textured kind of rugged stamp where it's supposed to miss some areas, but really great solid stamping throughout these inks. So I love that there's some familiarity and some brand new colors in the collection. We've redesigned the ink pad top and renamed the ink formula Stellar Ink to better fit in with our line, but also because the stamping and techniques you're going to do with it are absolutely stellar. Now with the felt pads in the Simon Hurley Create inks, one of the comments we would see quite often is that people thought that their ink pads were quite dry and they didn't know how to get the ink out of them. That could either be one of two things. If it's an older ink pad, you might need to try re-inking your pad, but if it's an ink pad that's right off the line and had just been shipped to you, it might be user error. So this is one of the things we kind of wanted to address with the new foam pads in Stellar Inks. So let's start off with a brand new ink pad. I just opened this one from my Simon Hurley Create line, and this is in the color Prom Queen. So let's open this up. Now with the Simon Hurley ink pads, these are a felt surface. So you can catch a little bit of texture on the surface of that pad there. And this is just a bunch of layers of felt on top of each other that are soaked in the ink. And when I show you this, when I lightly tap on the surface, you barely get any ink on your finger there. Not much at all comes off. But then when you tap harder into here, you'll notice the ink pad isn't moving. It's very firm and solid. But when you tap nice and hard, lots of ink is going to come off on your surface. So there you can already see you have to use quite a bit of pressure in order to get the ink out of the surface, which I think some people just weren't used to. So now let's go on to our Stark White cardstock and let me show you. When you tap very lightly on the surface and swipe across, that's barely any pressure. You don't really get much ink out of the felt pad. And I want to show you this becomes especially apparent when you've been using the ink pad for quite a while and you haven't re-inked it. So here's my Prom Queen ink pad that I have in my craft room, and you can see it's even less. Very difficult to actually get the ink out of the pad, especially when it's a little bit drier. I might need to re-ink my pad here, but that's sometimes, I think, the hard part is because when you apply the pressure down, there's actually quite a bit of ink still left in this ink pad. It could still be re-inked if you want it juicier, but I think that a lot of people don't know, just you have to apply the pressure in order to get it out of this felt material. And then going in with the Simon Hurley Prom Queen pad that I just opened, going in with a lot more pressure, you can see there's a lot of ink in that pad. You just have to give that pressure down on the surface, which I think makes people uncomfortable to do, but don't worry, you're not going to ruin the ink pad. It just is a completely different feeling and material than what you'll notice from a foam ink pad. Now let's go in with the brand new Stellar Inks and just show you what the surface of that foam pad looks like. So this is the same color called Prom Queen. You can see already that the foam pad is a lot different. There is no texture on the surface, Whereas if you look at the Simon Hurley pad, there's kind of this felt texture on top of the surface there. But it's not so much about looks, more so how it performs. So when we turn this onto the side, let me show you. When you tap your finger lightly on the surface, your finger is practically coated with ink. You don't need to use much pressure at all, but I will show you that when you do apply that pressure down, this foam pad is going to kind of squish under that pressure. Now it's still pretty firm, it's not just going to cave in on you, but it does take a lot less pressure to get a lot of ink out of here. That foam pad just really wants to give up lots of ink. So with very little pressure at all, you're able to swipe this across the surface and get a beautiful amount of color right down onto your cardstock without trying at all. Super smooth, bold, and vibrant color. I love it. And so that's what makes the Stellar foam ink pads very different from the felt ink pads that you're used to. But I think the foam overall is going to enhance the experience, especially with stamping. So let me jump in and show you just how beautifully the foam helps to get a great stamped impression. So let's start off with the new Prom Queen Simon Hurley pad that I opened today and do a little bit of stamping. With these, I liked to apply quite a bit of pressure on the surface as I was getting the ink down. And then because the felt has a little bit of a texture, you kind of want to lightly tap afterwards just to kind of even out that texture on the surface. If you can see it's nice and smooth on there, then you can go in and do your stamped impression. And I'm gonna stamp down this floral stamp from my watercolor flowers image. So there we go, a nice stamped impression from the Simon Hurley pads. I think that does a great job of stamping still. Again, it's the same formula and it was designed to stamp beautifully. I think the problem is when people started not re-inking their ink pads and you've been using it a lot, because sometimes it's hard to tell when you should be re-inking your pad and maybe it's got a little bit drier, then it becomes a little bit more difficult to get the color that you want without using a stamping tool and stamping it several times. So let me go in here with an ink pad that I've been using in my craft room. This is the one that I use in like all of my videos. And I'm gonna go in, it probably needs a re-inking, to be honest, but just show you what this looks like when I stamped it down. Now this is where we start to see the problems here. You can kind of see that felt texture inside of that stamped image, and it's definitely a lot drier. This ink pad for sure needs to be re-inked. So if you're seeing that with your felt ink pads, definitely go in and re-ink them and you'll get a better, crisper stamped impression because you should be seeing one like this top pad where it's brand new. But now I want to show you with the Stellar ink. And I think this is where the foam pad really excels, is with just the most gorgeous stamped impressions and with little to no effort as well. So we'll go in with the exact same color. This is Prom Queen, and just a light tap or two is going to fully cover the stamp just absolutely beautifully with ink. Then we can go onto the surface, stamp this down, give it some good pressure just like we did with the other images, and check that out. A beautiful stamped image that is so solid, and you can even see the difference between the first one, where they're supposed to look pretty much the same. This one is a lot more solid, a lot crisper, and gives such a beautiful, bold result. The Stellar ink is really light years ahead when it comes to stamping and getting beautiful, bold, and crisp impressions with your stamped images. Now I also want to show you what an outline image would look like too, so I'm pulling out this little butterfly image from the Everyday Wreaths stamp set, which has quite a bit more detail to it. So let's go in. Here I'm going to use the Black Widow Stellar ink, my first black ink pad I've ever created, which I'm so excited about. I think we did amazing on this one. Again, really light taps is all that it takes in order to ink up your stamp. And then we can go in and stamp this down really beautifully. And check it out. You still get all of that amazing, crisp, lined detail in that butterfly. You're not missing any of it, and it's not puddling up. We went back and forth in the lab at Ranger and made sure that the weight of the ink pad and the amount of ink that we put into each one of these Stellar ink pads is just the right amount. I find that sometimes I've used foam pads in the past and there is ink everywhere and it's a mess and it doesn't do well with outline images because they submerge the pad in ink and just give you way too much at one time. So instead of making it super messy, we wanted to calculate out how much you actually really needed to do your stamping and make it a great experience right out of the box for you. So even if you accidentally press too hard, you might get ink on the acrylic block, but the image is still going to stamp beautifully and it's not going to be like a puddly mess all over your stamp like I've seen in the past with some other ink pads. To show you this another time, I'm going to go in with the bold Woodgrain stamp. This is a beautiful red rubber background stamp, and sometimes something like this where it's a lot more solid would be really difficult to stamp. So you'd have to go in with like a stamping tool and stamp it several times, but with the new Stellar inks, it literally is just so much as light taps all over the background. to just cover this with that ink color. So here I'm using a little bit of Weeping Willow all across the background in just a matter of seconds. And then I'm going to go right on with my piece of stark white cardstock. I'll go in here with my pressure tool to just press this around and make sure we get a nice even stamping all across the surface. And then we lift it off. Check out that stamping. Super crisp, super bold and intense and nice and smooth. I mean, that is like the dream. Stamping this so crisp and smooth the first time around, not having to do it several times and not having to use a stamping tool. It does an amazing job. I also love that my inks react with water, so you can go in when you need to clean things off, and this isn't going to stain your stamp at all. So you'll just go in with a mister and wipe it right off, nice and clean. Now let's quickly talk about re-inking your pads. With the Stellar inks, you're going to need to re-ink them more often. Because it is that foam surface, it allows the ink to come out of the foam pad a lot easier than with your older Simon Hurley felt pads. Those didn't need to be re-inked as often. But these foam pads are going to need to be re-inked a little bit more often, so we recommend buying the re-inker along with the foam pads. Now with the Stellar ink re-inkers, we did change up the way they look a little bit. This is how the Simon Hurley re-inkers used to look. There was no color on them. It just states the name right below the logo. But I will say, if you have the same colors, so like Clear Skies or Prom Queen or Guppy from your Simon Hurley Create re-inkers, those can transfer over to your new foam pads. So you don't need to re-buy the re-inkers if you already have them for your felt pads. Those same colors will work for your foam pads as long as the color label is the same on these new Stellar ink pads. But with the Stellar ink re-inkers, again, it's the same formula inside of here. We just changed the label up a little bit so that on the top of them, you're gonna have this color band. That way, when your bottles are sitting upright like this, you've got a little bit more of a view on this side of what that color is going to look like so that you can more easily find your re-inkers for the ink pads and re-ink them a little bit quicker. So here, for example, is the Stellar ink Prom Queen re-inker. You can also use the Simon Hurley Create Prom Queen re-inker. That will work just as well. These have kind of a fine point tip on them that you do want to be careful with. Because the foam pad is a little bit delicate, you don't want to go in nearly as firm as you would on a felt pad and really work it in with this tip. You want to go lightly, and I kind of go at a sideways angle too, barely touching this tip to the ink pad, and I'll just go back and forth and swipe this on top of the surface. I am barely touching or kind of just hovering over that ink pad because, again, I don't want to cause damage to the surface of my felt. And I'm just going to gently re-ink over top of this whole surface. Just like that. And that's going to give you a really great revived pad that you'll be able to do lots of stamping with. Now, cap your re-inker off. You don't want to use that re-inker tip to work in the ink. If you want to, you can always take like a stamp and kind of zhuzh it on the surface of your ink pad to sort of work it into that foam ink pad there. This is going to work that ink in there a lot easier. Just like that. So use a surface that's not going to damage the ink pad to swipe it on. All right, and there we've re-inked our ink pad. Now, once you're done re-inking an ink pad, it might be too juicy. Let's see, let's go in and ink up my stamp and let's stamp this right down. All right, no, that looks perfect. It gives us a beautiful stamped impression. But if at all you feel like it might be a little bit too juicy, you can always press it onto the side. You're going to remove just a little bit of that ink from the surface of the pad, but it might make it a little bit more even on the surface, or take out some of it if you feel like you've added too much ink to your pad. But like I said, when you get a brand new ink pad, we really did measure the ink pad out to perfection to make sure you're not gonna have a mess all over the place, and they're gonna get really great crisp stamping right away with your new Stellar inks. Now, one of my favorite things about my Simon Hurley Create and Stellar ink formula is that it blends beautifully. And when it comes to blending, you need the perfect blending tool to get a smooth blend across your surface and lay down your color. And I have just the thing for you that we've been working on for 6 years. So let's take a trip down memory lane on how we got to this idea. So ink blending brushes became a thing in the crafting industry quite a while ago. They are an amazing tool that was not just a trend, but it's really lasted the test of time because they work really well for applying inks to your surface. This is what the blending brush looked like at the very beginning. And I just ordered this off Amazon because it's a makeup brush. It was taken from the makeup industry and adapted for the crafting industry. And there's been lots of changes that have been made to the blending brush over time, but when I first saw this, I knew I didn't love it for ink blending. Because it has this kind of handle that's bendable, I assume so that when you're pressing it on your face, it doesn't just, have tons of pressure to it. This gives it a little bit of a release of tension there. But for ink blending, when you're going down on your surface and you're trying to apply more pressure to get more color, it's kind of just bending upwards like this, rather than actually applying a ton more pressure on your blending brush. It's really just moving the brush a little bit. So when I first saw this, I chopped off the handle of this blending brush, and I chopped off the handle of another tool, and I made my own little blending brush, just like this. This was sort of my first product prototype, and I was like, this is sort of what I want a blending brush to look like. I wanted the handle at the top of the blending brush. That way when you hold onto it and you press down, you're actually applying the pressure down onto your brush and getting a more heavy-handed ink blending. So I showed this idea to Ranger about 6 years ago, and we tried to make this happen. So we went back and forth with different drawings, and we ended up making something that looked like this. So it was a small handled blending brush that had the bristles right at the end here, the handle at the top. It had a little grip right here for you to hold on to, but the bristles were still a little bit too splayed out. So then we went back and we created this, which has more of a collar here, which holds those bristles together and gives you a really great compacted brush that was absolutely great at blending. But I still wasn't in love with the feel of the handle. It was a little bit too small for my hands, kind of fell through my fingers like this as I was blending, gave me a little bit of fatigue. And also at the time, Ranger wasn't willing to invest a ton of money into this, which is understandable. This was years ago, my ink line had just come out, and investing in a custom design like this takes a lot of time and money and a big investment up front. So we set that off to the side for a couple of years, and about 2 years ago, I revisited the idea and I was like, hey guys, I think we should really make this work. I still don't see any tools like this in the marketplace. We can still fill this gap because I thought it was absolutely necessary. But this time, me and my brother went to it first before we sent any designs off because we needed to make this handle more comfortable. So I had my brother, who is an engineer, go in and design what he thought would be the most ergonomic handle. Not looking at what we had done previously, I wanted him to do this all on his own so I could see what he would come up with no internal bias of what we had done in the past. And he created a bunch of handles, some that were thicker and had no rounded edges. And then, well, we wanted a rounded edge and we wanted a little bit more of a comfortable handle. So let's make this a little bit more narrow. But what if we want the handle just a little bit longer? And well, some people wanted it thinner. So we made a thinner and longer handle. And so we kept 3D printing and tweaking the handle until we found one that we absolutely fell in love with. And I'm not just talking about just us falling in love with this handle. We took these blending brush handles to all of our friends, different restaurants we would go at. We would ask people with no bias and we'd be like, hey, hold on to this handle. Do you like the grip? Do you like if you're like swirling it? We wanted to make sure this was so comfortable for not just our hands, but everyone that used it. And we went with the handle that everyone unanimously loved. No biases involved because we blindfolded everyone as well to make sure they weren't just choosing one that everyone else was picking. And if that isn't dedication to product development, I don't know what is. We turned our design in, and this is what we came up with. My brand new medium ink blending brush in my line with Ranger. So here's what your packaging will look like when you get it. There's a couple examples on the back, as well as a bunch of information on how to use the brush. But let's dive in. Open this up. And we made a couple of changes to the actual brush and design from the original prototype as well. We found that flat bristles work better to get more even coverage across the surface and get a smoother blend. So we made them flat white bristles that are incredibly compacted to give you the nicest, smoothest blend that you can get. It still has a collar around the neck of the brush to keep those bristles compacted together and not have them splay or spread. This is our super ergonomic handle that we designed, and we also did it in a soft touch matte black plastic that feels super smooth when you're holding on to it, so that it's easy to hold on to and blend for long periods of time without getting fatigued. And the top of the brush has my Simon Hurley Create logo right on top. That's a surreal moment to see. I'm obsessed with how this brush turned out. All right, now the reason why I designed the brush that I did with the handle at the top is because when I saw these makeup brushes originally, I kind of would have a hard time controlling them. So let me tap a little bit off to the side at first. These foam pads give a lot of ink right away. And I'm just going to go in and lightly blend on the surface. Now, that gives you kind of a nice blend, but I'm a really big fan of bold and vibrant color. And so if I wanted to go in here and really build this color up, you would have to like keep going and apply layers, because you can see that when I'm pressing here and trying to apply more color, it's really just like tilting this head and not really putting a ton of pressure. The way to get a lot of pressure with these brushes, which I didn't find was super ergonomic for me, was going in with your finger on this brush and really pressing down to give that color, which does give you that color blend in the end, but it's just not what I wanted to do, and it wasn't super comfortable to have my finger out like this. The other thing about these brushes is because they have that roundness to them, is that when you go in with them after inking them, it tends to give you one spot that's really dark and then kind of has a hard time where, because it doesn't evenly ink this, it's really just giving you the most solid area where the highest bristle is, and it doesn't use the rest of the bristles to blend. And so that's why I wanted to create a brush that was just easy to get a nice smooth blend right away. So you can go right on with your brush and get a nice, smooth, and solid blend. And the awesome part is that you can really keep going in and layering up that color and building it as dark and rich as you want to, because you have that control of the brush, and you can apply as much pressure as you want down onto that surface to really get that color nice and solid and super crisp. With any sort of ink blending brush, I recommend having one brush for each color family of inks. So right now I have 9 brushes, but I recommend having about 11. This gives you one for pink, red, orange, yellow, green. I always split up the blues into like 3 categories. So you have this like lighter teal color, a more true blue, and then a really dark blue, and then a purple brush. The reason why I included 2 more is because I'm going to dedicate one to brown and one to grays and blacks as well, and that will sort of complete my color family of brushes here. The reason why I recommend this is because I don't really recommend washing your brush a ton. Now you totally can. On the back of the brush, it tells you to wash it out with water, and that will clean out your brush nicely, but then when it's wet, you don't want to go in and use it with your ink pads. So that's why having them per color family like this and not washing them each time you want to use it in between will just help your brush hold up better over time, but also make it really easy to craft and not have to keep taking breaks in between when you're color blending. And you could of course bring this down to like 9 brushes if you want to get rid of like some of these blues and kind of condense them down into less color families, but this is generally what I stick to here. I haven't found a great storage solution yet, but right now I'm just using this little lipstick container, and I'm just leaving gaps in between them to store them nicely, but I'll keep updating you guys if I find a better storage solution in the future. Alright, so let me show you what I mean about having them one for each color family. So here is Rosy Cheeks from my Simon Hurley ink line. I'm going to open this up. You can see we've used the Prom Queen, which is the hot pink color, on this one before. So I'm going to go into my Simon Hurley ink pad and just kind of start inking this pink brush up with that new color, and then I'm going to kind of blend off to the side just a little bit until I get a lot of that hot pink color out of the blending brush, and then I can go in with my Rosy Cheeks ink and start blending. I'm going to go right into the center of my Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock and start blending. You'll see there's no harsh marks. It's blending absolutely beautifully and giving me a nice smooth blend across the surface. And it's giving me a really true tone to what Rosy Cheeks looks like. Now take note that when I blend with my Simon Hurley ink pads, you want to go in here with more pressure than you usually would with your foam ink pads, and you're going to go back and forth while applying quite a bit of pressure. Don't go in and lightly tap, because with the felt ink pads, you're not going to get a lot of ink when going in with a little light tap. Then I'll go in and keep blending across the surface here, and you get a super smooth and beautiful blend with these brushes. I absolutely love that. All right, now let's go in and switch it up. So here I'm using a little bit of Prom Queen now. I'm going to use the Stellar ink in the Prom Queen line just so I can show you the difference between how to apply the ink to your brush. Now with this, I'm going to go in and just do light taps on the surface. You don't need to swipe it across the surface, but if you want to, you can, just to get a little bit of ink on the surface there. I'm going to lightly tap this off because maybe I got a little too much ink on the surface there. And then we can go in and start our blending. We're going to go in and just blend this super smooth down onto the surface. You can see you get a lot more ink right away with the foam ink pads. And then I'll just go in and blend. But this is having no trouble blending super smooth blend, starting right in the center of your cardstock, and it gives you an absolutely gorgeous blend of color with these blending brushes. So that just goes to show you how easy it is to switch from colors. But now if you want to go back from that really bold color, I've wiped off a little bit already. I'm going back in with Rosy Cheeks now, and I'm just going to kind of tap off until I see that the color is back to kind of that Rosy Cheeks color. And then I'll go in, and again, oh, back to Rosy Cheeks. See, this is what I mean about not needing to go and wash these as much. I would highly recommend just buying some for different color families, especially color families you use most often, because having to wash these in between each color to make sure they're perfect is a little bit of a nightmare. So this makes it super easy to just wipe off some color off to the side and then keep going in with your different ink pads for each color family. So I wanted to explain that because some people ask how I clean so fast in between each one. I don't. I have one for each color family, and I'd recommend around 11 brushes if you want to include gray, black, and brown as well. All right, let's move into a demo. I'm going to show you why you might want to use a brush on your projects rather than other tools. And I'm also going to show you just how beautifully the Stellar inks blend together. All right, so I'm going to place down a piece of my Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock onto my sticky mat from Altenew. I'm also going to place another one right next to it. So we're going to be blending two backgrounds at the same time. And for this background, I have the Deco Diamond stencil from my Simon Hurley line. Now my stencils have one side that's more matte and one side that's glossy. You want to take the glossy side of that stencil and stick it down towards your sticky mat. The more matte side of the stencil has a coating on it, and you don't want that coating to peel off of the stencil, so I stick the glossy side of the stencil down onto anything sticky. I'm going to do the same thing with the other background so we can compare apples to apples. Stick that glossy side of the stencil down towards your background. Now I chose this Deco Diamonds design specifically because it has a lot of points and sharp edges to this design, and I want to get a really clean look when we're blending. So let's start our blending off using the Stellar ink in this High Tide color, and I'm going to go off starting using my blending brush. So I'm choosing this kind of teal color family of the blending brush that I have, and I'm just going to go in and lightly blend on our surface. Now when I pick ink up from the Stellar inks, I just lightly tap into the ink pad because again that foam is really going to release the ink onto the blending brush, so little light taps with your new Stellar inks is going to go a really long way, and you can see just how smooth and seamlessly this is blending onto the surface of our stencil. There's no rough edges, it's blending really nice and smooth across the background. And then for the second background, I'm going to use the domed foam blending tool, which I actually really love. This is not a dig on the blending tool. I just want to show you what it looks like through a pointed stencil like this. But in a lot of techniques, I very much so still use this tool, and we'll continue using it afterwards too. So again, dipping into the Stellar inks, I'm using a new blending foam here. I tend to keep one of these for each color because it soaks up more of the color, and they're pretty inexpensive as well. And I'm going to go in and just start my blending across the surface. Now you can see you might want to use a lighter hand with this because the foam really picks up lots of color, but it's beautiful. I love that. You know me, I love my bold, solid colors. So this is nice and good. And I'm just going to blend that down on the surface there. Next, I'm bringing in Clear Skies and my True Blue blending brush here. Going to tap that into the surface of my ink pad and start blending into High Tide. And I mean, check out how gorgeous these colors blend into each other with little to no effort. They blend so smooth and seamlessly. One of my favorite parts about my ink formula, whether it's Stellar inks or Simon Hurley inks, is they just blend together beautifully with like no effort, and you have such a smooth and seamless blend. And then again, I'm gonna go in with my domed foam blending tool, and then I'm going to start blending right onto my surface here and blend that beautifully into the High Tide color. And again, little to no effort, even with these blending tools, and I'm just going to get a nice, smooth, and seamless blend across the surface. Next, I'll bring in Midnight Snack in the Stellar ink. I'm going to go in with my really dark blue blending brush, and I'm going to bring this in and start blending that right into Clear Skies. And again, just light taps in our ink pad. One thing that I love about using the blending brush is that you can really build up your color, so you can start as light as you want. Even if you're kind of heavy-handed like me, it really gives you the opportunity to start lighter and then build up the color. And then again, that handle on the top, not having any flex to it, really allows you to just apply more pressure and get that darker look. And so I find even though you do have to still build up the layers with this blending brush, you're having to work less than if the handle was off to the side and you're like not really able to apply the pressure. All right, That looks awesome. Blends super smooth into each other. And then I'm going into the domed foam and I'm going to blend the Midnight Snack right into Clear Skies. All right, then I'm gonna go in, last but not least, with 100% Juice, which is a brand new color, going in with my purple blending brush, and I'm just going to bring this color in from the bottom and blend it in with that Midnight Snack. I love, love, love how this turned out. I think that looks amazing. And then I'm grabbing a brand new blending foam for this one because it's a brand new color to the line, and I'm going to bring that in and start blending it in from the bottom. And that will mix in and blend with Midnight Snack. Super stunning. All right, so we'll peel this off of the blending brush background. I am obsessed with how this turned out, and you can see just how smooth and beautifully these inks blended on the surface. I'm loving this new color combo with that bright high tide and the 100% juice mixed in there with the older colors. This looks stunning. And then we'll go in and peel it off with the other one. Again, same stunning blend. Now, the ink that went underneath the stencil here was not my point. I think that I went a little bit too heavy-handed because I'm used to using the felt pads where you have to really press with those blending tools to get all the ink onto the surface. So I'm still working on that. That was kind of a user error here. You want to be gentle when you're tapping into these ink pads, especially when it comes to a foam blending tool like that where it soaks up more ink. So ignore that. My real intention when I show you this background was to show you the difference between the crispness of a blending brush and when you use a foam tool, you might not get as crisp and detailed of lines through your stencil. So you can see here with the blending tool, you get more of a rounded kind of hazy look to it. Whereas with the blending brush, you really get all those little bristles down into the corners and details of the stencil, and you get a really sharp, detailed design. Whereas this still gives a beautiful look, but it's just a little bit more hazy. Of course, if I wasn't comparing it side by side, I still love how this one looks, but you can really tell the difference when you pull that blending brush example in frame. Now keep in mind, I wanted to show that comparison to show you that there is a need for blending brushes, because years ago, I didn't think that I needed a blending brush until I saw like a demo like that, and it really changed the way that I look at things and when I use my tools, because there really is different tools for different times. Like for example, if I want to really just cover this with tons of color and have it be really bright and bold right away, I might go in with my domed foam blending tools. And you know that I've been using these foam blending tools forever and will still keep using them even after a blending brush comes out, because check this out. You can just lay that color down super fast. You know I love my bright and intense colors, and in a matter of seconds, you have that layer of color down. I think that in itself is one of the wow factors of Stellar and Simon Hurley inks, is just how beautifully they blend. And again, I need to be careful. They are juicy ink pads, so literally like the lightest tap will get you tons of color on the surface. I'm used to like scrubbing on the felt pads, but really light taps and you're gonna get tons of color. And then last but not least, we'll go in with 100% juice and blend out this gorgeous purple tone at the bottom. And I am a lover of purple. I know some people kind of hate it, but like, how could you hate this gorgeous shade of purple here? And check out that background, smoothly and seamlessly blended, super vibrant and bold colors. That is where I think these tools really shine. So not shading anyone's tool, but I think every tool has kind of its own job and does really well at that. All right, now let's go in with this stencil set. This one is called Geo Circles. It's a 2-piece layering set. So for one of the layers, I think I'm gonna go in with this one right here. And then again, you want to lay the shiny side of that stencil facing down towards the sticky mat. And I'm going to lay this right onto the background. I'll stick it right into the sticky mat. And for this, I wanna show you how my inks react beautifully with water. And this is the Stellar or the Simon Hurley Create inks. I'm gonna go in and just lightly mist from above the surface, give it some nice sprays across the background, and that's going to react beautifully. So when we lift this off, check that out. It's already starting to react and give the ink kind of a bleaching effect in those areas. You can either let this dry and keep reacting, or sometimes I pull up my heat tool, which helps kind of speed along the process of drying and intensify that bleaching effect. And check that out. It really lifts off the color so beautifully and gives you a much lighter version of that color in that design area. So that is just one of the fun watercolor techniques you could do with these inks. and really makes them come to life with the designs. All right, I love how this is looking so far, but I want to keep going. So I'm going to use the second layer now. Again, you want to lay that shiny side facing down towards the sticky mat, and I want to line this design up so these diamonds are right in the center of that circle design. And then I want to build up more color on top of these. So Stellar and Simon Hurley inks are translucent dye-based inks, so the more color you keep layering onto the surface, it's going to get darker and darker on top of each other. So I'm going to go in with my blending brushes for this especially because this is kind of a pointier design that we're layering in. Going to tap on my color, and then I'm just going to layer the exact same colors right on top of each other to get a darker version of that color. So starting off at the bottom here with 100% juice, moving into Prom Queen with my pink blending brush next. I'm going to blend that right over top of the Prom Queen design. Moving on up into Guppy, I'll tap it into the ink pad and then blend right onto the surface to get a darker orange. And last but not least, I'll go in with Shooting Star and my yellow blending brush at the top to finish it off. All right, and then let's lift that off the background and check that out. You get a much darker version of the color in those diamond areas, and then around it you have those lightened circles by using water to bleach out the ink. And again, really sharp edges for that blending. That's where that blending brush really comes in handy to give you tons of detail in your stencil. Now I showed you how my Stellar ink reacts with water, but I also want to show you just how beautifully you can use it as a watercolor paint. So I'm going to go in with the Heartfelt blooms, and I've stamped out 2 of the large outline floral images that we can go in and watercolor in. I also like to clear heat emboss it just so the ink stays in the lines a little bit easier. And then I'm going to grab my Stellar inks and create a palette of color. Now what I love so much about the Stellar inks is just the lightest tap on your glass craft mat is going to give you tons of color for a color palette. So I'm just going to add a little bit of Shooting Star, then some Prom Queen, and last but not least, we'll throw down a little bit of 100% juice. And again, little taps of that color and you get a ton of ink out. And then to create a palette of water, I just spray some down on my glass craft mat. That way I don't spill it out of the cup. Now, whenever I'm watercoloring, I always like to grab a little bit of plain water first and just go over top of all of the images. I'm using my Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock for the watercoloring, and it tends to suck in the ink and water right away if you don't lay down a layer of water first to get the cardstock ready to take the color. Then once it's all ready, I can add a little bit of water down to my ink. So I'm going to go in with Shooting Star to start off with and start my watercoloring. And check out, because there's so much ink on there, you get such a beautiful, bold, and vibrant, intense color. Then I'll go in with a little bit more water and bring in a little bit of Prom Queen. And because there's water on that surface, it's going to help kind of blend these colors together nicely. So I'll blend that gorgeous pink color into the yellow. And since they're translucent, it'll create a nice orange in between. But truly, this is game changing because with the Simon Hurley inks in the past, you were able to still watercolor just the same because the formula is the same, but you weren't able to get as saturated and rich of colors because it was a lot harder to get the ink on the surface to start watercoloring with. Whereas this gives you like almost too much ink, but it gives you such a bold color. And then of course, if you want the color lighter, just take a little bit out of this, wipe it off to the side to make the color a little bit lighter. But I love this bold, intense color for my watercoloring. I think it looks gorgeous. All right, so just finishing off with a little bit of 100% juice, and I'm blending that right into the Prom Queen color. And this is looking so beautiful. I love that color blend. All right, and here are the florals once they're all dry. You can see they dry back just a little bit, so that's why having that rich, bold, intense color right away with the foam ink pads is really helpful, because once all the water evaporates off the surface, it just dries back just a little bit, but these are still super bold and gorgeous. I love how easy it is to watercolor with this beautiful ink formula, and again, the foam pad makes it so easy to create the palette of colors. All right, so that was a look at the brand new Stellar ink pads and my new ergonomic blending brush. I'm so excited for you to get them into your hands and test all of this out. I think you're going to absolutely love the new ink and blending brush, and I can't wait to see what you create with it. Leave me a comment down below letting me know which technique was your favorite in today's video, and let me know your thoughts about the new products. I can't wait to chat with you guys down there. And also down below is a full supplies list as well as the brand new inks and blending brush if you want to pick those up. And using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me, and I'll see you soon for another card making and crafting video.